the road on the right-hand side, as I said, Crocosaurus Cove, where the brave or just plain stupid amongst you can swim in a glass cage with the largest croc you've ever seen. Now, if you want to get to Crocosaurus Cove, sit with you, ask the driver of the fast track entry tickets. We say goodbye right now. And a warm welcome to those joining us for rejoining us here as we fall late in this seated in the safety. Before our next stop, I'll tell you a little about Darwin. With a population of just over 120,000, Darwin is hardly large. In fact, the population of the whole Northern Territory is just over 230,000 and is spread out over 1.3 million square kilometres. Known as the gateway to Asia, Darwin is truly a multicultural city. It has one of the largest Aboriginal populations of any Australian city, as well as large Greek, Chinese, Italian, Vietnamese, Indonesian, Filipino and Timorese communities. These different cultures bring a vibrancy and diversity that is unexpected in such a small city and makes for a very exciting range of dining experiences. You're in for a treat here. We're now coming up to our next stop, Doctor's Gully. Located nearby is Aqua Scene Fish Feeding, which is around about a 5 to 10 minute walk from here. Due to the tidal nature of the fish feeding, check with the driver for times of the next fish feeding display. As we leave and ride along Mitchell Street, we're riding through the suburb of Larrakia. This suburb is named after the Larrakia or saltwater economic, traditional Aboriginal. As we continue down the hill, the everything related to is the site of the old Darwin Hospital. Closed in 1980, it suffered from quite an unlucky history. The original 89-bed hospital was opened for business on the 2nd of February 1942, and just 17 days later it was bombed by the Japanese. It was then placed under army control and remained so until June 1946. By the 1970s, it was obvious that due to an increased population that a larger hospital would be required for the future. The decision whether to expand the old or build a brand new one was made in 1970. When the old Darwin Hospital was badly damaged during Cyclone Tracy. Today, Catharina Hospital is known as Darwin Hospital, becoming was closed. St. Kingston, why? Now we're entering one of Darwin's most elegant and exclusive areas, Cullen Bay. Cullen Bay is an engineering marvel. With very high tides, the reclamation project was a complex undertaking. 100 downside of being in a tropical environment is that we're subject to severe weather. Cullen Bay Marina was designed with this in mind, so has been built to protect with locked waterways and high seawater, and a huge 8-door lock that controls all vessels and water entering and exiting Cullen Bay. In fact, Cullen Bay itself is a registered cyclone haven to both small and medium-sized maritime vessels that may happen to be within range to take shelter here when a severe weather warning is issued. Very smart. We're now approaching our stop here. So if you're leaving for a look around Cullen Bay, please ensure you have both your belongings and your ticket with you. Surprisingly, the maximum temperature rarely goes much higher than 38 degrees. But that's not the cause of the heat alone. It's the humidity at over 95%. That's hot, even for us. Prepare to leave, please ensure you remain seated at all times for safety reasons. On the 9th of September 1839, HMS Beagle, Charles Darwin fame, sailed into our beautiful harbour during its surveying of the area. They named the harbour Port Darwin in honour of their former shipmate Charles Darwin, who had sailed with them around the Pacific Islands 3 years previously. The settlement here became the town of Palmerston, named after Lord Palmerston, who was then a politician but soon went on to become the Prime Minister of England. Unknown to the HMS Beagle at the time, Charles Darwin was the great Republican who outtook the ship to become one of the most famous men in scientific history, as his trip on HMS Beagle had led him greatly to the discovery of evolution in publication of origin of species. Lord Palmerston was all but forgotten here by 1911, whereas Darwin was the name on everybody's lips, so the town was renamed Darwin. I'd just like to take this opportunity to say, officially, welcome to Darwin. Soon on the land we'll see the Darwin Heritage Precinct, which consists of just 4 houses. What makes this precinct special is that these are the last 4 houses on the property. Their museum is still at the original location, as they are the only examples of pre-World War II Darwin architecture. The houses were built in the early 1930s, and remarkably, they survived both the bombing of Darwin and Cyclone Tracy. We're now heading downhill towards one of this area's most famous markets, the Mindle Beach Markets, held alongside the beach every Thursday and Sunday, 4:30 p.m. till 9:30 p.m. during the dry season. If you have a chance to visit the markets, you'll also experience a sensory for the mineral beach markets and the botanical gardens. And a warm welcome aboard to those joining us here at the casino stop. I hope Lady Luck was with you, and if she still is, please ensure she also remains seated at all times for safety reasons. I know you'll understand. Now, as we continue, we can see on the right-hand side the Waratah Sports Oval. This sporting ground is shared by the team and local government. In the exact opposite season to the traditional run down south. To our right is the George Brown Botanical Gardens. Now, George Brown didn't start it. It was the garden. The garden was first made here in 1886. Largely private the Second World War, the gardens were home to anti-aircraft guns, and so, of course, they were heavily bombed by the Japanese. Then in December 1974, the gardens were completely devastated by Cyclone Tracy. That's how good the botanical gardens are here. George Brown remained mayor of Darwin until his death in January 2002. Now, to our left is the Darwin Middle School, which concentrates on students from years 7, 8 and 9. However, on this side of the school was the Vestige Brothers Meatworks, with a string of meatwork companies and cattle stations in place. The Darwin Vestige Meatworks was a massive expansion costing £1 billion in 1917. A lot of money, the equivalent of around $250 million today. Unfortunately for the Vestige brothers, the Great War going on in Europe meant a labour shortage, as most of the labour market was in the war. The result of this was the great demand for rice. And so the Vestige payroll was so big, the meatworks were no longer. It closed its doors in 1919. Okay, ladies and gentlemen, and boys and girls, we're now approaching our next stop, the Museum and Art Gallery of the Northern Territory. The museum was first opened in 1981 and consists of 5 major permanent galleries: a touring gallery, education facilities for school groups, a theatre, the museum shop. If you're feeling a little peckish, it has a great cafe. If you're leaving us here, please keep your ticket in a safe place, and we look forward to welcoming you back a little bit later. A warm welcome to passengers. See East Point Reserve, and that will be our next point of call. Travelling through the mysteriously named suburb of Fanny Bay. Tracy hit the jail hard when she struck, and I'll tell you a little more about Tracy shortly. Now we're turning into East Point Road. Darwin Harbour itself is huge. The Darwin region includes Port Darwin and Shoal Bay and covers 3,227 square kilometres. The magnificent houses to our right certainly have million-dollar views. This is a very sought-after residential area. To the left is a walking track offering some of the most scenic views. This track leads ahead to our destination of East Point, or in the other direction, back into the centre of Darwin. Why wouldn't you stay fit living here? As we drive ahead, we can see land on the other side of the harbour. This is called Cox Peninsula. Less than 5 kilometres from Cox Peninsula. Mainly distance here to travel to access the road. There is a short way from the peninsula and that's quite a map of the very much You may see people swimming in the water. If they don't mind. Crocodiles are regularly which, if not big enough, is made worse when it's certain times of the year. The deadly box jellyfish also swim in the same water. You have to be keen to be a swimmer here, or very stupid. Please don't. We're now approaching East Point Reserve. Please remember to remain seated at all times whilst the bus is moving. We want you to stay safe, so just sit back and enjoy the view. East Point Reserve is a special place for the people of Darwin and is one of the most popular recreation areas for both locals and visitors. Not only is the reserve readily accessible from both the city and the suburbs, but its range of attractions is considerable and is by far the largest park area in or near the city. East Point Reserve covers almost 200 hectares, of which 30 hectares includes natural forest land. If you look to the right, you'll see Lake Alexander. This was originally just coastal marshland, and now the 3.5-hectare lake is the main element that sets East Point Reserve apart from other picnic areas in Darwin. Although man-made with seawater drawn from nearby Fat Bay, Lake Alexander has a water quality better than that of naturally occurring pools, making a body of water that is safe for swimming throughout the whole year. It's croc-free. left is one of Darwin's most iconic and prestigious restaurants, Pee-wee's on the Point. Originally, the restaurant was built on a site called Pee-wee's Camp, established here in 1911 to protect Port Darwin against naval attacks. Pee-wee's restaurant, with nearly 4 acres of absolute waterfront in the natural ambience of East Point Reserve, showcases an imaginative design that openly displays the natural beauty of Darwin. The former East Point military area is of major historic significance as the area is the last major fortress built on Australian soil. It's also Australia's only battleground and as such played a major role in the overall wartime naval strategy of both Australia and Britain. Although large 150mm and 230mm anti-aircraft guns covered most of the northern east section of the peninsula, after the war the East Point area was used by the military only as a place to stable their horses. However, the artillery units were left here untouched until the 1960s, and then they became the Royal Australian Artillery Museum, which was eventually opened in 1969, with the aviation and naval sections opening in 1972. Very shortly we'll arrive at the main attraction here, and it certainly is, the Defence of Darwin Museum. If you'd like to visit the museum, then please ensure you have all your belongings with you and also your tickets. Very precious. You'll need that if you want to rejoin a bus later in the day. Drive back towards town. As we drive back, keep your eyes open and look for some of our native wildlife that can be seen here. There are many wallabies at East Point, and they've been a feature of the reserve for many years. They're enjoyed both by locals and visitors. There was, however, a substantial increase in wallaby numbers over recent years. The wallaby population in 1974 was counted at 220. By the early 1990s, they numbered around 2,500. This increase alarmed the management as large areas of this nature reserve were being significantly damaged. Now, population control methods will refer to them as family planning. The number of wallabies today has been brought down to around 600. You may also see some bandicoots, brushed up with various species of reptiles as we drive through the reserve, as well as over 35 different species of butterflies and 133 different species of birds. The monsoon forest, as it's known, contains several camouflaged jungle fowl nests that allow observation of the unique birds. Amongst the mangroves, there are also many species of fish, as well as various crustaceans and shellfish. All these animals live together and utilize the special ecology of mangroves for breeding and feeding. Slightly further out to sea is the offshore coral reef, often visible during ocean tides. This is unique because it is a major reef system providing a rich and diverse ecosystem for sea life and is protected as part of a maritime reserve on the inside of Darwin Hop. ancient history of the Aboriginal people of the Larrakia language group, who were the first inhabitants of the Greater Darwin area. For centuries, the Larrakia had established trading routes with Southeast Asia. They also traded their Asian imports with other tribes as far away as South Australia and Western Australia. Knowledge of these trading routes come from physical evidence and from stories that would be passed on in song form. Indeed, communication between tribes was largely by well-established song lines that went throughout the country. These songs would tell stories and histories which would be retold and recorded along the routes. The Dutch first visited Australia's northern coastline in the 1600s and created the first European maps of the area. This is why there are so many Dutch names in the area, such as Arnhem Land and Groot Island. Despite Australia's strong British influence, the first British person to see Darwin Harbour wasn't until over 200 years later. Lieutenant John Stokes of the HMS Beagle first spotted Darwin on the 9th of September 1839. The ship's captain, Commander John Wickham, named the port after the man he had befriended on a previous trip, Charles Darwin. In 1869, the settlement of Palmerston was established with a population of 135. In the early 1870s, Palmerston felt the effects of gold fever when gold was found at Pine Creek, which is about 200 kilometres south of here. Gold had been found while digging holes to stand the poles for the newly invented telegraph system. Eureka! The subsequent gold rush meant that by 1875, the population had dramatically increased to around 300. Palmerston was renamed Darwin in 1911. In the early 1940s, at the outset of World War II, around 10,000 Allied troops arrived in Darwin to defend Australia. On the 19th of February 1942 at 9:57 one Japanese airplane was attacked. It was the same plane that bombed Pearl Harbor, considerably larger than had been launched on Pearl Harbor. The attack killed almost 200 people. south of Australia and return. Now this is quite some terrain. It took 4 years. Is complete without the mention of beer. So on the left you may see the brewery opened in 1957 and made the iconic Darwin Stubby. The original Darwin Stubby was a mere 2.25 litres in size. Although the Stubby has had many changes in size over the years, it continues to be a much sought after commodity. Now, the brewery closed in the late 1980s, taking the iconic Darwin Stubby to Queensland, which doesn't seem right. Yet despite this, the tanks are still referred to as the oil storage tanks. Tells two iconic Northern Territory stories in one location. In fact, life-size holograms tell the stories as you experience virtual reality like never before. Also, you can climb inside a real flying doctor service medical aircraft. If you want to experience this, then tickets are in. Left, you'll see large white fuel tanks which form part of a large independent petroleum import and distribution terminal called DOPAC. Just the other side of the tanks can be found the terminal for the GAN, one of the great trains of Australia, taking one of the great train journeys of the world. If we have any passengers on the bus today who are lucky enough to have come here on that fantastic train journey, I'd just like to offer a special a little further ahead in the distance you'll see East Arm Port, which was opened in 2000 and being able to accept vessels up to 80,000 tonnes. It immediately became a vital wharf for mining, bulk liquid and live export shipping. Behind East Arm Point is Blatant Point, where the Impacts liquid gas project is situated. This 5-year, $34 billion project has changed the landscape and some say the economy of Darwin. Gas is piped in from fields up to 890 kilometres away and has cooled down to minus 161 degrees, which is where the natural gas becomes liquid in those big white tanks or eskies. Closer to our next stop, I'd like to tell you about Stokes Hill Wharf, which has a long history dating back to the early 1800s. Having been used both for the arrival of European settlers, then by ships and flying boats during the war, when it became a target and was hit with the full force of Japanese bombings. Once you might have known if you think you recognise this area, well, it's from the movie Australia, which was filmed right here, although the cattle didn't run on this wharf. That was a wharf double in Queensland. We'll soon be arriving at Stokes Hill Wharf. If you wish to enter the Bombing of Darwin Museum, tickets can be purchased from our driver. hugely popular waterfront precinct ahead of us, whilst on our left is the award-winning Darwin Convention Centre, and directly in front of that, the Darwin Wave Pool. A peculiarity of the geography is that Darwin doesn't usually have waves unless there is a cyclone, of course, so the wave pool is very popular with local children. It's also free of some of those natural nasties you may not wish to swim with in the ocean.